This is a detail that we often miss. When I first read this, I thought, well, I would find the answer if I just read it in Greek. No, you're still missing all the details that you need to fully fit the story together. And then I connected the dots. Jesus just tells her, your faith has made you well, but he doesn't say what her faith was in. What did she believe? I believe I will be healed, so I'm healed. That's a common interpretation, but it's missing something. They didn't include enough detail for me to know what's going on. The clues are actually in the Hebrew Bible rather than in the Gospels.
You're going to have to spell out the connection between this and the woman.
In the first century, a Jewish person would connect these.
The way that registers for me is that he's so holy it'll rub off, but this is so much deeper than that. Hello. Welcome to Biblically Speaking. My name is Cassian Bellino, and I'm your host. In this podcast, we talk about the Bible in simple terms with experts, PhDs, and scholarly theologians to make understanding God easier. These conversations have transformed my relationship with Christ and understanding of religion. Now, I'm sharing these recorded conversations with you. On this podcast, we talk about the facts, the history, and the translations to make the Bible make sense, so we can get to know God, our Creator, better.
Hi, it's Cass. I wanted to first start off by saying thank you for listening. I created this because I could not find it anywhere else on the internet, and it takes a very small team and a large upfront investment to make it all possible. I really hope that you find it valuable. I would never expect anything from my listeners, and I'm always going to do my best to first outsource support from brands. However, if you do find value in this episode, I invite you to contribute an amount equal to the value that you have received, either through a one-time or a monthly donation linked in the show notes below. I understand that not everyone, though, can donate monetarily. So I ask that if you love Biblically Speaking and you cannot donate, please show your support by subscribing to this channel wherever you're listening so that it tells the hosting platform to show Biblically Speaking to more curious and confused Christians. In exchange for this support, I personally promise to you to always create the highest quality production possible. Thank you so much for listening. Now let's get to the show.
All right. Hello, Dr. Sedlacek. How are you?
Good. How are you, Cassian?
I'm so good. I'm really excited just to talk with you to pick up where we left off last time. I want to talk today about the verse where the Jewish woman touches the hem of Jesus's cloak and why that's so important. I read it as a woman has such good faith that she touches just the hem of his coat, and something that has been plaguing her for 12 years suddenly just stops in a very non-medical but life-changing type of way. Jesus is like basically getting mobbed at this point, and yet he feels the power run out from him. He knows that something has changed, and he allows her to identify herself.
So, let's read the verse first.
Okay.
So, Matthew 9:20 to 22, and just 3 verses. And behold, a woman who had suffered from a discharge of blood for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. If I only touch his garment, I will be made well. Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well. And instantly the woman was made well. In my circle of Christians, this verse is often taken to mean that if something's wrong with my body, all I need to do is blast some faith in the general direction of God, and I'm going to be healed. For us coming to these texts with a Western mindset, a 21st century mindset, we need to be a little bit suspicious that our quick, easy read of that text missed the point. And so myself, I always do this to myself. When I read a text, I say to myself, is that something a first century Jew could have got by reading that or by being exposed to that content? Or would they have understood something different? And would they have already known, because they culturally knew this, the right background information to get the complete picture, or we're missing it because we don't have the background?
At that moment in time, when they heard that for the first time, maybe after it happened, where did that register? How did that register? Why was it actually significant in even only 3 lines?
There's a question I always ask people, and I get wide ranges of answers on this. What was it that she had faith in when she reached out and touched this garment? And the most common answer I get, she had faith she was going to get healed. And
but what did she know about anything Jesus had done before that moment?
That's where it gets interesting. And to develop that question further, we have to go look in our Hebrew Bible for the answers.
I'm just going to give you the TLDR, my version. Jesus comes up on a boat. He comes up to a tomb. I'm envisioning super scary graveyard, maybe something enclosed. And it had been known in the community that there was a possessed guy who had multiple personalities. And like one of his personalities was like a monster, like with super strength, just tearing chains off. No one could keep him down. And he had so many demons in him. They called him Legion, like a Legion army. And then Jesus comes face to face with him because he comes up on him, and this man recognizes God in him, starts screaming at him, tears himself free.
So this region was also called Decapolis, the region of 10 cities, 10 Greek cities. And so they were still there in Jesus' day with a large Greek population.
So at that point, a demon has recognized that he's the Son of God. He says, please don't send me back into the abyss. He essentially doesn't want to be sent back to hell, but instead Jesus sends him to a flock of pigs, and those pigs run off a cliff or they drown themselves. So I just think the point of bringing that up is his disciples have just seen this. So they have seen this miracle take place. They've seen the recognition of a demon. But then after that, a man comes up to Jesus and says, hey, you clearly know how to heal people. Could you come save my daughter? She's dying. And so now a whole crowd of people is coming with Jesus to watch Jesus heal this man's daughter. They're all rushing. And then in this mob of people heading to this dying girl is when we get to the Jewish woman that touches the edge of his cloak. So what did she have her faith in? Because I don't think she was there with legions. I don't think she just saw that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of traveling around that happens here. Jesus goes to the region of the Gadarenes, but in Mark 5 on down to about verse 17, the Gadarenes want him to leave after this miracle. They beg him to leave.
Oh, yeah.
So he goes out of their coast. They were terrified. Form of an individual walk up to somebody with demon-possessed situation and just command the demons around and get them to do something and watch the man become stable and of a sound mind. They had never seen that happen, so they were terrified. I kind of want to talk a little bit about, we mentioned this earlier, but the issue of clean and unclean coming from the Jewish perspective has become unclean. Because first thing you have to ask yourself is, why are there pigs inside Israel? An unclean animal, and this is supposed to be a Jewish area, but the reason that, yes, and so it's a good question to ask, why are there even pigs in the surrounding stories? But if we remember that this is a Gentile population, this is a Greek population, then that explains the pigs. They had pigs. And when the other thing to remember is that a demon is also associated with unclean spirits. So there are holy spirits and there are unclean spirits. We don't read about any other type. Because clean and unclean are one scale of something being clean or unclean, and holy and common is the other scale. So there's two scales that we see, and it's interesting to me that you don't have common, clean spirits, and you don't have
holy, unclean.
Right, you don't have holy, unclean. If you have an unclean spirit, it is already common and unclean. If you have a holy spirit, it's already clean to be holy. So that's the difference. So you really only have two categories of spirits. Just kind of on a different topic, now that we brought out clean and unclean, this is also often overlooked in New Testament theology. How does holy and clean interrelate? They're not always the same thing, because it's two different scales that are coming to us from the Hebrew Bible.
Right.
They're not the same thing. They're two different scales.
I didn't even know that these adjectives were so important.
They're very rigid distinctions in the Hebrew Bible and within a Jewish mind in the first century.
Let's tie it back to the cleanliness, uncleanliness, and common and holiness of this man.
And still with the demon in the Gadarene area, the demon is unclean because the demon is an unclean spirit. And the people in the village have gotten tired of dealing with this man's antics, so they've banned him. They've even tried to lock him down, and he doesn't stay locked down. He breaks the chains and goes out. But where does he go to sleep? He goes to the cemetery. And this is also a place of uncleanness, because to touch the dead or things of the dead or the dust from the dead is to make yourself unclean. So the fact that he comes charging right out of the cemetery with his shackles burst, running at Jesus, most of his disciples would think he's going to make our rabbi unclean. He's going to pollute him. That would be the first thing that they would think. But here's where Jesus shows that, yes, that's the typical thing. The things that are unclean can taint the things that are clean. but he was the ruler over clean and unclean. And his presence was enough to dispel the unclean. And this is what we see in this interaction between Jesus and the demoniac. And of course, Jesus has authority to cast out the demons, but where do they go? He doesn't send them back into the abyss, but he sends them into the unclean animals. So unclean spirits go to the unclean animals and they're gone. So in one movement, he not only cleanses the demons from the area, but also the unclean animals from the area, which probably upset the economy for the Greek section there.
Wow.
And it probably is one factor in why they wanted him to leave.
So what you just said was he not only was untouched by an unclean spirit that came towards him. So the uncleanliness never spread to a holy person or a clean person like Jesus. Not only did it not affect him, but he was able to take away the uncleanliness and the commonness of this possessed man, put it into another unclean, common pigs, a herd of pigs, and then once they drown themselves, basically get rid of it. So that town specifically, as terrifying as that's going to be just in a human experience level, he did a great thing by dispelling so much uncleanliness for that region of Gentiles.
The text only says that they asked him to leave because they were afraid,
Yeah.
but I think also the economic dent they're going to have because they lost all their pigs is going to be part of it too.
The day, like, such good was done in that moment.
Yes.
There's a sermon in that somewhere.
I want to take a moment to highlight the platform that's revolutionizing the way that people learn about the Word of God: school. When I first started this podcast, my goal was very simple. I wanted to equip people with clear, accessible, biblical understanding through scholars. But I quickly realized that podcasting alone wasn't enough. I wanted to create a space where people could actually connect and learn and dive deeper beyond just listening. That's when I found School. School is the most user-friendly platform I've ever come across. It's built by Sam Ovens with insights from business minds like Alex Hermosi. School combines the best of online education, coaching, and community in one place. It's intuitive, powerful, and it connects you to a global network of learners and teachers. That's why I launched Biblically Heard, a place where you can chat with scholars, take courses from beginner to expert level, and even connect with me directly. So if you're looking to build a coaching business or launch an online course or create an engaged community, School beats out every other tool. It combines the best of Patreon-style tiered services and Telegram-style community feeds. It's a seamless scheduling tool with integrations with Zapier, Zoom, and even Google Calendar. If this sounds like the right platform for you, please use my affiliate link in the show notes below to get started. It won't cost you anything extra, and it keeps this channel going. Now, back to the show.
Yes, I think a lot of Jesus's interactions are coming into contact with the unclean, not being affected by it. He's greater than the forces of evil and uncleanness, and he's able to dispel it. And that's kind of the surprise.
Okay, so now everyone's like, get out of here, Jesus, you're scary. And now another man comes up to Jesus. What do you think is the timeline between that? Do you think he pivoted to leave town and then a guy approached him? Or do you think it was a couple days later that some guy approached him to say, my daughter is dying?
Well, they have to pass across the sea. So that's the first step. That's probably a several-hour journey.
It's 8 hours on the water at least.
It depends on the wind because it's sailboats. And most of your wind is going the opposite direction that he needs to travel now because he's on the end where the wind blows to. And now he's got to go to the side where the wind blows from.
Yeah, I would kill to hear what those conversations were like between the disciples on that boat.
And the man who was cleansed actually wants to join them. He wants to come so that he could be with them again. But Jesus didn't allow him for some reason. We're not even told why. Jesus said, no, we're going to go alone. And in part of that is because they're about to go to a new mission, a different mission, and Jesus needs the 12 to be with him. But he says to him, go and tell your people what was done for you. So he actually turns him into a witness, basically. He says, go to your home and your friends and tell them the great things that God has done for you. He doesn't say what I did for you. He says what God did for you. But we have to remember, he's not in a Jewish neighborhood here. He's in a Gentile, a Greek neighborhood. So in the Greek neighborhood, he wants him to go tell what God has done because it won't get misunderstood as easily and it won't cause debates as much. In the Jewish sectors, if Jesus is perceived as one who's acting on behalf of the divine, it creates more problems than it solves. So he tried to do his miracles on the down low.
Yeah.
When
So
when
because a
he's ready
Gentile would
for
hear that and be like, sounds good, whereas a Jew would be like, not my God.
Yeah, because for the Greek man or the man in the Greek sector, typically what's worshipped is the pagan Greek gods. And recently in the last 40 years or so, the Caesar has been trying to get the acclaim to the gods. Instead of going to the gods, it's going to Caesar. But this region probably was still worshiping their old gods, but giving Caesar all the credit and things that Caesar needed to keep Caesar happy.
So how
And
come they wouldn't feel threatened by Jesus if they're like, whoa, what about Zeus?
yeah, I think for Jesus to turn him into a witness, it's to begin having people think not about Zeus, not about Caesar, but let's think about God. And so it has a semi-evangelistic purpose here.
Whoa, this guy went from so demonically possessed to being the mustard seed planted in such a paganistic society.
Yeah. Hmm.
Oh my gosh.
He was
Wow.
cleansed and then he was set apart right after to be the witness.
I might cry. Oh my gosh. That is so amazing. So now they're on a boat for hours because the wind's against them. The disciples are probably reeling. At least I would be if I was one of them. And now they get to a new type of land. I'm going to let you take over.
This is a Jewish sector now. They're headed
Got it.
back to the Jewish side. He's back in home territory now. And when he comes to, in Mark 5:22, when he comes to this side, one of the rulers of the synagogue, named Jairus, came running to him and saw him and fell down at his feet. That is a verse that's very easy to pass over when we're reading it in our Americanized Western mind, 21st century mind. Everybody fell down at people's feet, right?
Yeah.
No.
That's how I greet all my friends.
Right, yeah. But in the ancient world, it was the only form of greeting someone divine.
How
You
many
never
divine people were they running into? Like,
none.
oh, got it. So that was like a big deal.
This was a big deal, and it's a really big deal if the ruler of the synagogue is doing it, running and then falling at his feet. When we read in our Bibles, the Hebrew Bible, how many times somebody fell face forward to the feet of somebody, they thought they were God, and it turned out they were an angel. Or when the burning bush is speaking to Moses, it actually is God in the bush. Now, a lot of ancient rulers expected people to do this to them, but in the Jewish circle, that did not happen. This was something that was only done to and for God. The proper position of prayer in the temple, in any time that was ever up, was a prostrated position facing the most holy place.
Whoa.
So you went down, face forward, face to the ground, facing the most holy place. And that's how people prayed at the temple. That was normal.
Okay, so a leader of one of these synagogues or temples falls at his feet.
Yeah, and that's a shocker. And we don't recognize the shock when we read this because we don't recognize what this means to the community.
There's no reaction. They don't even say, and then his disciples were baffled.
We don't get the crowd pan from the camera here to see what's going on with everybody else.
Right.
So he falls at his feet and beseeches him greatly, saying, "My little daughter lies at the point of death. So please come and lay your hands on her that she may get well and live." So he already understands that Jesus can heal his daughter and help her live, but he's already prostrated himself for her, and he's not a commoner, so to speak. He's one of the rulers of the synagogue. So when a ruler of the synagogue does this, it's like, well, he knows his theology, right? And it's like he's bowing down full-faced in front of this guy. If the ruler of the synagogue does this, he's their spiritual leader. It's like, you're not going to go correct him, right?
Right.
This is a detail that we often miss just reading it quickly in English.
Yeah.
And Jesus begins to go with him. He starts to follow him there, and much people followed him and thronged him. He's still on the way to heal this man's daughter, and a big crowd presses in on him. This is also not the first time Jesus has been in this area.
This is great. Okay, so now a mob is pressing in on him, and he's in a mosh pit. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he's headed somewhere, and the road has become congested. And a certain woman who had an issue of blood, we read it in Matthew already, so now we're in Mark's gospel reading it. A certain woman which had an issue of blood for 12 years and had suffered many things of many physicians. So this was the result of the medical practitioners of the day trying to cure her. Don't know what they all would have been. I've read some Greek manuscripts on ancient medicine. I've read some of Hippocrates' own works. He was the founder of the Greek school of medicine. And some of the treatments were quite a bit different from what we're used to in the 20th or 21st century. So some of them sound barbaric to us, but they did work. I don't know what would be the treatments in the first century, but so she suffered many things. She's been suffering for 12 years. If you've got something wrong with you and it's wrong with you for 12 years, you're going to try to go to a lot of different doctors and try to get it fixed or seen or something. So she endured a bunch of treatments that were not successful. That can be exhausting, draining, emotionally, psychologically. And then the next note, and she spent all that she had and was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse. She never got better. Everything just went downhill. So she was at her wit's end. And when she heard of Jesus, she heard about Jesus. We don't know what she heard. That's the first thing that stands out in my mind. What did she hear? Not just that, oh, a man named Jesus is outside. She heard something about him that we're not told here. She heard about Jesus. She came up in the crowd behind him and touched his cloak. That's Mark's gospel. In Matthew, we had touching the fringe of his garment. In Mark's gospel, we just have the cloak. No specific region of the cloak is mentioned. For she said, if I may but touch his clothes, I shall be well. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up. And that doesn't mean that her blood in her body suddenly turned solid and she couldn't have blood. What it means is that the bleeding stopped. And she felt in her body that she was healed of that affliction. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue or power had gone out from him, turned him about in the press, or he turned about in the press and said, who touched my clothes? And his disciples said to him, you see a big crowd around you, and you're asking who touched you? They're kind of taken aback by this. They don't have enough information to know what's going on.
Right.
You're in a crowd of people, and somebody whirls around. You've been elbowing your way through, shouldering your way through, and then they whirl on, who touched me? You've been bumped by 50 people in 50 seconds. What do you mean, who touched you?
Exactly. Been on like her hands and knees, right?
Running my own podcast, I'm always moving too fast. I'm finding guests, I'm editing episodes, I'm creating reels, or guesting on other shows. Not to mention, I just live in a world that moves fast. Notifications, trends, endless to-do lists. You know what feels like a blessing in all that? Slowing down. I'd love nothing more than a moment to pause, be present, and choose something timeless. That's exactly what Dwell Label is all about. When I first discovered Dwell Label, it wasn't just about the clothes, it was about a mindset. Thoughtful, intentional fashion that doesn't scream for attention, but instead invites you to slow down. Their pieces are modern takes on classic styles, made to last, not just for the season, but for years. I love that I can throw on a Dwell Label outfit for editing in a coffee shop, Bible studies, or looking professional in an interview. It always feels right, comfortable, effortless, elevated. And here's the best part. Dwell Label does not just talk about rest. They live it. Their website literally doesn't work on Sundays because they believe in pausing and dwelling on what matters most. So if you're looking for high quality, timeless fashion that aligns with a lifestyle of intention and presence, I can't recommend Dwell Label enough. Shop Dwell Label with the link in the show notes and use my code BIBSPEAK15, BIBSPEAK15 for an exclusive discount at checkout. Take a breath, slow down, and dwell in the good things. Now, back to the show.
It's not something that's up at chest level.
Right.
It's something that's down low on the garment. And the woman was fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her. She came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. And the go in peace part is something that seems a little bit odd to us in American setting or the Western mindset. But this is a common expression when people are greeting or departing in Jewish culture. He's basically saying goodbye here.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, it seems rather abrupt, rather fast. And he says, go in peace and be healed of your affliction. And then, of course, that's when he gets the update on Jairus' daughter. But I want to back up here and also catch Luke's story. The interesting thing here is that Luke is a lot more precise about details when it comes to medicine. He's got the word for physicians. He's got discharge of blood, very specifically stated here, where the other Gospels are a little bit more general. And she spent all her living. The thing here that I notice with Luke's writing above the others is that Luke comments a lot on the socioeconomic status of individuals in the story. She's broke, and Luke is careful to say it in a lot more detail. But what do we have here? What are we missing to understand what she has done?
It's very abrupt.
Yeah, the story is really abrupt, and when you read all three accounts, John doesn't have the story, so when you read it in these three Gospels, you're left wondering, that was really abrupt. It seemed really valuable and important here for the writers to include it, but they didn't include enough detail for me to know what's going on. When I
So
was
what are we
reading through this
missing,
carefully,
James?
yes. When I
Tell
first
us.
read this in Greek, I thought, well, I would find the answer if I just read it in Greek. No, you're still missing all the details that you need to fully fit the story together.
Okay.
Well, I was in a role where I was teaching Hebrew, and we happened to be teaching on the text that opened my eyes to what is the missing part here. And then I connected the dots. So I want to go to another text, but we're going to go to 3 texts in our Hebrew Bible. And once we read these in English, we should be able to see what it is she has faith in order that her faith has made her well. Jesus just tells her, your faith has made you well, but he doesn't say what her faith was in. What did she believe? What exactly was it? Was it just that she would become healed? I believe I will be healed, so I'm healed. That's a common interpretation, but it's missing something. Numbers 15, 37, 38, and 39. 3-verse segment. This is in the Torah. This is what God told Moses to tell all the Israelites to do. So verse 37 is really short. The Lord said to Moses, 38, speak to the people of Israel and tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments, the cloaks, throughout their generations, and to put a cord of blue on the tassel at each corner. So these tassels were probably white or off-white, and there would be a blue cord in the middle of this tassel on the corners, but only on the corners. And it shall be a tassel for you to look at and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and to do them, and to not follow after your own heart and your own eyes. So this tassel has a special purpose. It's to remember all of God's commandments. Every time you see the tassel, you're supposed to remember. But then not only remember them, but remember to do them. And remember that we're not supposed to follow after our own heart and our own eyes, but to follow what God has said. So that's the purpose of the tassel. And what is the thing that God has told them? It's the Torah. It's the laws of Moses. And so every time you look at the tassel, you think of, the books of Moses, the things that God told us to do. We need to do them and not follow after our own heart and our own eyes, because our own heart and our own eyes can lead us in a lot of different places. So these tassels are there. There's 4 of them. A cloak is a squarish garment that goes around you, but the tassels would hang down low. It's often called a talit in Jewish culture, and the tassel on the end is the tzitzit. And these are the pieces of it. And in modern Judaism, this is often worn on a prayer shawl, a smaller talit. They were normally large cloaks that were worn over the whole body. And this was a primary garment that you would wear to keep yourself warm on a chilly evening out. It's the interesting phrase to me here is speak to the people of Israel and tell them to make these things, put them on, and throughout all their generations do this. So let's fast forward to the New Testament. Jesus is a Jew. What must he have on? One of these talits with the tzitzit at the corners, with the blue cord in the tassel on each corner.
But isn't he in a Jewish nation right now?
He is in the territory, yes.
Okay.
So he's left the region of the Gadarenes and he's come to the west end of the lake, which is a Jewish section. So he's there and he has his talit and his seats on as he's walking around. He would not have disobeyed this. Jesus fulfilled all the law in his lifetime. So he wouldn't have been disobedient of the law of Moses. He would have done what's in the text. And this is something that often escapes our often Western Christian mindset, specifically thinking of Jesus as doing the things that are in Moses' law carefully. We're often not taught this in church, for example. But he does. He did. And he has to have one of these on because he's a Jew and he's one of the ones that are throughout all the generations. So he's obedient to the law. He's wearing this cloak with the tassel on it. Here in Numbers, we find a command by God for devout Israelites to place the tassels on the corners of their garments, specifically having a blue cord in it. And something that's not immediately apparent, but it's clear in the Hebrew Bible, is that this word corner, and I'm going to say the Hebrew word, is kanaf.
Okay.
But it's called kanaf because if you're running down the road with your talit on and these corners start flapping, it looks like wings.
That's
okay?
beautiful.
Yeah, keep that image in mind as we think about Jesus in his first century garments. The kanaf is an important piece to how we're going to connect some texts together that aren't immediately obvious. So we have this kanaf. It can either be translated edge, corner. It's the Hebrew word for wing. Now I want to kind of go back and catch Luke's word for this thing. What did he say? She touched the fringe of his garment. All right, so I want us to keep the word kanaf in mind here. And here's one of the issues that comes to mind. When we translate the Hebrew Bible into English, and then we go and translate the Greek New Testament into English, we are not guaranteed that the translator of both ended up on the same English word. All right, it's the same word used throughout the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, regardless of whether it's referring to a bird's wing or the corner of a garment with the tzitzit on it, the tassel with the blue cord thread. The other thing to notice is that God commanded Moses that all Israelites should do this forever. This was not a temporary thing in Moses' day. So Jesus is doing it in Jesus' day. It's a powerful reminder of what God has given us and what we should do, obey God. And that was everywhere present as you walked around in the community. You would not miss this thing or go a day without seeing this thing. Probably wouldn't go 5 minutes without seeing this thing. So Jesus follows this tradition. Jesus would have had these fringes on his garment with the corner tassel having that blue cord in it. And it's not an accident. It's not random. Now, there's another story in our Hebrew Bible that talks about this kanaf. In the book of Ruth, Ruth 3, 7, 8, and 9, just 3 verses. Just to give a little background to these 3 verses, Ruth has become a widow while married to an oldest son. An oldest son is the inheritor. He's the one who inherits his father's property. And Ruth was married to him, but he died before they had a child. So she has the right to produce the heir to the property because she was married to the oldest son, but she no longer has the ability because he's dead, his dad's dead, and the property's in limbo. Well, in the Jewish circles, you had a law that allowed someone who was in a reserve status in the community to come in and be the redeemer of such situations. And that person was a man of decently good means. They couldn't be a broke person. They had to be somebody with substantial means, and he had to be somebody who was upright, who remained single until an available widow needed a husband.
Interesting.
And so there was a guy like that. His name was Boaz, and Ruth was targeting him. She wanted him. She wanted to marry him. And we have to realize that's going on. She's not so aggressive, but she's clearly got him in mind. She's very focused on him. It hasn't been too terribly long since she's developed this approach to Boaz. It's only been a few days since she's known him, but she's honing in on him because he's available and she fits the profile of someone he should marry, because that's his job, is to be a person who stays single until a widow needs a husband in the clan. But here's how the approach happens. In verse 7, Ruth 3:7, when Boaz had eaten and drank his supper, his heart was merry, and he went to lie down at the end of the grain heap. He's the one that pounds the grain to turn it into material that can go to the mill, and then it gets ground at the mill into flour. So he's got the back-breaking end of the job. So when he's done with his job for the day, he's pretty beat, pretty tired. So anyway, she comes in, and she had recently converted to the Israelite religion. She was not an Israelite. She was from Moab, but Ruth makes a commitment when she follows Naomi into Israel. She makes a commitment to serve her God. She came in softly and uncovered his feet and lay down. And we think, well, what has that got to do with anything? In this kind of time of the year, it's going to be hot in the day, but it gets really chilly at night because of where it's located. It's an arid area. The temperature drops significantly after the sun goes down. So by uncovering somebody's feet, that means in the middle of the night, they're going to wake up with cold feet. They want to fix their blanket or their talit with the tzitzit on the corners. So at midnight he was startled and turned over, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. She's just chilling there. Crazy. And he said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I am Ruth, your servant." But then she tells him what to do. "Spread your wing over your servant, for you are a redeemer." Now, what word is that? That's kanaf. What's she talking about? The corner tassel, the end of the kanaf, where the tzitzit is sewn onto the talit. "Spread this over me, for you are a kinsman redeemer." It's a symbol of covenant and covenant making, because it is the symbol of God's covenant with Israel. First of all, to remember God's laws, to do them, and to keep them. So that's the symbol that it is. It's a covenant symbol. Put your covenant symbol over my head. Put it over me, because you are able to marry widows.
Wow. And Boaz realized what was going on at that point.
Yeah, he got the message.
We're getting married, aren't we?
Yeah, she's asking him to do the thing he's been waiting to do. He knows what this symbol means. We miss what this symbol means because we don't recognize it as a covenant symbol, the symbol of covenant making and covenant keeping. Not just covenants, but keeping the covenant, because that was what it was for.
All right, James, you're going to have to spell out the connection between this and the woman.
We have to read a third passage in our Hebrew Bibles, Malachi 4. Malachi 4, verse 1, "But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in his kanaf.
There it is.
In his wings, you shall go out leaping like calves from the stall, and you shall tread down the wicked, for they will be ashes under the soles of your feet." It's a rather odd phrase, but it suggests that there's healing in the tassel with the blue thread on it that someone who's coming will have. In the first century, a Jewish person would connect these. Many, not all maybe, but many would connect these three passages together to realize that there is a person who's coming who will have healing through the kanaf on the end of their talit, or the tzitzit on the end of their talit, or kanaf as it's often called. And that person is connected to a messianic passage, a Messiah passage. She would have realized by then that Jesus' healing activities had never yet included the talit, the tassel on the end of the corner, the blue corded tassel. And so if he's really the Messiah, and I touch that, and I'm healed, then that also proves he's the Messiah to me.
Oh my gosh. So this woman was well read, or are you saying that was common knowledge, that verse in Malachi?
These were common, but also the megalote scroll, the scroll that has the 12 minor prophets, would have also been read commonly too. But she's also been all over the place trying to get healed and speaking to different doctors, probably visiting different synagogues in this process. Her ability to have heard the passage of Malachi would be quite high.
That is insane. I mean, there's no way for her to know, like, hey, of all the healings that Jesus has done, did anybody touch the hem of his cloak? But in her head, he even says in one of them, if as long as I just touch the hem of his coat, I'll be healed. That says that's what she thinks. That I love when that happens, when it connects.
It connects when we realize what Hebrew word would get translated into that Greek word, and which Hebrew word is used in the other stories, and how the kanaf is a broad category word. Because if you're reading Malachi in English, you're not going to connect this thing to anything with a garment.
Right.
If someone has healing in their wings, they might be an angel or something with wings that flap. This was a common word for the talit on the corner of the talit where the tzitzit is sewn. This woman perceives that Jesus should be able to do it that way.
Yeah.
And goes for it. And none of the gospel writers even tell us that she's connected these dots.
No.
They don't. And so the clues are actually in the Hebrew Bible rather than in the Gospels.
I'm so glad you're here. I mean, I would have never learned this in church. This is so intense. This is really intense, but amazing. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, it's the only thread that I think that can connect those three accounts with this and lead us somewhere that's relevant to what she was expecting and what she did.
So from the American 21st Western eyes, if we tie it right back to the beginning, we're going to just take this as, oh, that was a quick little story that they threw in there that maybe alludes to women hygiene. I don't know. But if you look at it with that Jewish, the time of Jesus, more of that type of eye, you're going to know, well, there's faith in here somewhere. And then there are some allusions to earlier texts if you're well read in that aspect. So James, this is just amazing. I mean, this podcast is set out to highlight the things church couldn't teach us. And I don't even know if I went to school, I would catch this. This is so in depth and so intense. That word is just covering it for me right now, because this is, it's amazing. I'm kind of lost for words right now.
The other thing to keep in mind is she is perpetually unclean until this bleeding gets stopped. With the Jewish ritual laws, she's unclean for 7 days after bleeding. Well, if she never stops bleeding, she never becomes clean. And for her to interact with societies and actually set foot in the synagogue and even go towards the temple are restricted until she's clean. So this is also an act that causes her to become clean so that she can engage in normal society again as well.
And I think that me, with my American mind, read this and we're like, okay, so Jesus is so holy. Even the farthest reaching parts of his clothes can heal somebody. But there is such a deeper Jewish connection here to the specific type of garment and the corners of it and the threads and the colors and the purpose and the prophets and what they've said. And the way that registers for me is that he's so holy, it'll rub off. But this is so much deeper than that.
Yes, it impacts us.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing this discovery. Thank you for hunting for it and sharing it. That's an amazing realization here and really throws just the understanding of God's word. So thank you so much. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time and sharing all this knowledge. Very, very insightful. And we'll see you back again here soon. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you.